I'm a lifetime superhero aficionado, and superhero cartoons take a big chunk of the credit. Or the blame, depends on who you ask. Welcome to my channel, KC, that's me, Carrie Chug, the Sledge Storyteller. Love talking about storytelling as an art form, its many mediums and its history. And if you like this video, please click like. If you like this channel, please click subscribe. And while you're at it, make one more click on the notification button. Thank you. Now, okay, this will be the only video in this series that will cover 2 decades of superhero cartoons, since otherwise there's not enough to make this a full video. And we'll stop the series at the end of the aughts, with a rapid increase in production of superheroes during the 2010s and beyond. It would mean having to cover releases for every year to do it justice. And that's an overwhelming proposition for a one-man production team. But let's get started. The 40s. It's pretty common knowledge that the first ever superhero cartoon was the Superman cartoons produced by Max and Dave Fleischer under Paramount Studios, more famous for Betty Boop and Popeye. Now, of course, DC settled on making a cartoon after negotiations failed making a Superman movie serial with Republic Pictures. Republic then made a deal with Fawcett Publications to make the Captain Marvel movie serial. Among the other interesting tidbits of trivia, after Paramount made the deal to make cartoons, the studio approached the Fleischer brothers about producing them, and they didn't want to make them. So they bluffed by saying that they couldn't do it with a budget shy of the then preposterous $100,000. To their shock, the studio obliged. Now, I'm not sure if this was the first example of near realistic looking hero action, but I have to believe that at the very least it was the strongest combination of imagery and movement up to that time. And that is largely because the Fleischer brothers used their own invention, rotoscoping, where animation frames are traced over live action frames. They initially made that work back in 1918 with the Out of the Inkwell series with Coco the Clown. Now, at this point in Superman's character evolution in the comics, he couldn't fly yet. Essentially, that's where we get the adage,
"To leap tall buildings at a single bound."
And as you watch these Superman cartoons, you can see how they were straddling between depicting Superman making huge leaps and launching into outright flight. But DC Comics agreed to have Superman fly because it was much easier for the Fleischers to animate. When you add all that up, you get a template that all serious subsequent superhero cartoon adaptations will build off of. Not always at the same level, as that will be pointed out in later videos, but these cartoons gave strong references of how believable movement could be created with a Superman cartoon. Now, this series came right between the Fleischer brothers getting it started producing 9 episodes, then Paramount severing ties with the Fleischers and resuming production of the remaining 8 episodes under the new animation banner of Famous Studios. As I pointed out in a previous video, they fell into public domain. Now, just know that you can't make any kind of stories with Superman designed this way, but with that we benefit from it as a reference for our quality superhero animation. Now, it pretty much stops there for the 40s and the 50s, at least in terms of cartoons with superheroes that are taken seriously by their audience. All efforts to depict such came up in a movie serial. Some are decent, most are less than engaging. But it's still worth dipping into superhero spoofs and cartoons that reference the mainstream superheroes. The first one of note, well, overlapping with the Superman shorts debuting in 1949, emerged Super Mouse, whose name would later be changed to the better-known Mighty Mouse, the creation of animator Paul Terry, who formed Terrytoons. Now, while I have known about him all my life, only while I was doing my research did I find out that he had an origin story from the very start. The kind that you wish you could come up with yourself.
Why, it's a supermarket. He bathes in super soap. He eats super soup. He chews on super celery. He dines on super cheese. And behold, a super mouse.
But anyone familiar with Mighty Mouse would also pick up on the fact that he would go through drastic changes in design, for the better if you ask me. But they changed his color scheme, which made him distinct enough to stay out of the shadow of his obvious inspiration Superman, giving him an enduring, recognizable image that has seen iterations peaking in the 80s. Over time, he would develop a bombastic and operatic voice that would become the template for anyone taking the comedic approach to creating a superhero persona. And it turned out to be a brilliant mix of superheroics and cartoon hilarity. So next up, I'll start by mentioning that the last Superman short under Paramount, Secret Agent, was released in 1943. But Paramount wasn't quite done with him then. The next year he was used, at least in comic strip imagery shown, was in the Popeye short, She Sick Sailors, where Bluto overhears Olive Oyl voice her adoration of Superman to the dismay of Popeye. And like always, Bluto jumps at the chance to put on Superman duds to win Olive's affections, to again cause imbalance in that enduring love triangle. Spinach again is Popeye's answer to the problem, and predictably, it turns him into the very counterpart to the conflict he's facing and becomes. But moving on to 1944, Warner Brothers made a move prophetic to their acquisition of DC Comics. They spoofed Superman with the Merry Melody short, Super Rabbit. Same costume, very much a different origin. Here, Bugs is an experimental rabbit. Scientists develop a carrot that endows Bugs with Superman-level strength and flight, and yes, by then, DC Comics had Superman completely transitioned to where he was fully fledged flying. But as a spoof, it shouldn't be watched in the same frame of mind as Mighty Mouse, since while he manages to get the upper hand on a crime duo of a would-be rabbit exterminator Cottontail Smith and his horse, there's a reversal at the end when... And in the real world, carrots are better suited for a horse's diet than a rabbit's anyway. But Bugs still goes out as his usual cheery self, albeit as a leatherneck. Then let's cap it all off with the only not yet mentioned qualifier for the 50s in the 1956 Looney Tunes short and antithesis to Super Rabbit. Now, Bugs as Super Rabbit was something of a klutzy superhero. The joke with Daffy is that he's straight up inept. His attempt at heroically stopping a building from being destroyed, which had been set up to be demolished by the city, he doesn't even get stopping a runaway rocket right. But poor Daffy can't even be a decent hero. But overall, we got the 40s, the decade that came in just after the superhero genre essentially came to be. But interestingly, Hollywood was more into that genre, thought they would work better with movie serials, and after one big cartoon came, no others were worth making up until the 60s. We'll get to them, except for spoofs. But that's my take on superhero cartoons as they were starting out. Agree, disagree, something too hot to leave out that I left out? Please let me know in the comment section. The link to order the Sledge Comic Books miniseries is in the link below there in both digital and paper format. Please give it a look. Let's all look for civility amid all the bad news out there about social and political strife. Let's not hate, and let's find friends wherever we may go. Everyone be safe, and God bless.